Yo, good morning. It's time. We're here. I'm in the Northeast. It smells like football. Matt Gajewski's with me, by the way, but you should know that already because Matt Gajewski and I have been doing this Showdown strategy show for way too long now, and I missed him. I missed doing this. You live out there, and you're out there in the Midwest. You know when the weather starts changing, like today, the low was 49. It's going to be 78. It's the best weather you can get, but it signals, Matt, that football is upon us.
I've never experienced this weather. As soon as football starts, I'm inside, grinding the tape, looking at the stats. I've seen it. I've looked at the weather reports. I just
You've
don't know
heard
what it's
about it.
like. You've heard about it. These beautiful days, I see none of them.
I don't believe that. You get out of you're actually not wrong. I don't get out much anymore either. Like once this week starts, you go from being able to do stuff in the summer, and for you, college football as well. So even prior to this, to now just like I'm gonna look like a ghost in a few weeks from now, just not seeing any sunlight, vampiric. But we're here, and we've got a great game. Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome to the Showdown Strategy Show on the Stochastic YouTube's channel, or if you're watching on X, what's up to you guys as well? Happy to have you with us. Wherever you want to watch, we got you covered. But remember, you can listen to all of this in podcast form, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any, archaic podcast platform. Believe it or not, for some reason, we still upload it there. And if you don't mind, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on X, hit the thumbs up there or hit the like, retweet this, whatever you can to help us amplify these. We appreciate you for it. Dude, how lucky did the schedule makers have made some wild decisions in the past. Like, you remember Russell Wilson was on 15 primetime games with Denver, and they all ended up being like 10-9. Last year, fine, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, then the Jets and Zach Wilson are on primetime. For week one, we have Ravens-Chiefs, Eagles-Packers in Brazil, which is dumb, but still a good game. Rams-Lions, and then you close it out with Jets-49ers.
What's our main slate going to look like? Because normally it's the opposite.
That's actually a great point. There's not, yeah.
Can't wait to play Gardner Minshew on the main slate with all this nonsense we're going to have there. But yeah, as far as Showdown goes, it doesn't get any better. I'm honestly used to like the 2019 Jaguars playing the Cleveland Browns or something, these gross showdowns. But I mean, anytime we get an extra slate, which Friday provides, I'm going to be here for it. And Showdown kind of just does that in general, giving us extra slates. So I'm excited regardless of who's playing. But anytime you get a defending Super Bowl champion and a perennial Super Bowl contender in the Ravens, yeah, it's going to be an awesome game. The spread indicates that. So I'm pumped.
To your point, though, and I was talking to Josh about this the other day. I forget how it came up. And I was like, yeah, I got the Thursday Showdown strategy. And I was saying, he said something like, well, at least it's a good game. And I actually responded to him with, I love I would prefer the Bucks Panthers game in a showdown, or, the Jets, the Jets Raiders game in a showdown over a marquee matchup. I just love getting into the weeds when you and I do this and trying to find the garbage that is going to win you a tournament. I do prefer, as you would say, what kind of games do you call them?
The greasy games.
The greasy games. I prefer the greasy games.
Yeah, so do I. They're harder to predict. You have a lot of times less certainty with playing time, and then just the wide array of talent you see from these teams. Is Bryce Young going to have a good game, or is he going to implode again? It leaves more, I think, uncertainty. And then, like I'm never watching Carolina and Tampa Bay on Sunday. One, they're never on red zone because they never score. And two, there's always a better game. So anytime those teams are on island games, you're actually forced to watch them, which I like. You learn more about them because like you're watching the Chiefs and the Ravens, no matter what time they're playing, Sunday, Monday, Nickelodeon at 9 a.m. I'm watching, but I'm with you. I like the greasy games too.
I think one of the reasons we like that too, and this kind of segues us straight into this slate, so we'll start talking some real football, is because with games like this, a lot of times, especially if you're someone that only plays a couple lineups, you just have to forego some of the top options. Like roster construction is clearly important, but when you can't just you can't jam all of the best players. You can get a decent amount of them and then go super cheap and hope that you hit on the somehow inevitable backup tight end touchdown in a primetime game. But there's something I love about those games where it's two teams that don't have a ton of high priced players and you can really construct the lineup to fit the way you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's good and bad for like casual people. You definitely get more players, but maybe you're just not as interested in the game. In this instance, you like can't play Mahomes, Kelsey, Rashee Rice, and then follow it up with Lamar Jackson. So you have to make tough decisions. I think it's tricky and somewhat volatile because, I mean, Pat Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson week to week, that's probably going to ebb and flow a lot. But, we can find advantages with ownership, with our Sims tool. There's a lot of ways to approach it, but it definitely is tough, like seeing, oh, I'm not going to have Derrick Henry in this lineup. Hope he doesn't bury me with a 90-yard touchdown on the first drive,
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Happy you guys could join us. If you'd be so inclined, atone for your sins this lovely Thursday morning. I mean, it's the start of the season. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. If you've seen from the others, I respond to all of them. We appreciate you guys for that. All right. Logan Grew. Logan says, fade Mahomeless if you like money. All right. Well, that certainly is a take. We can get it. People look at Mahomes first of all, they still won the Super Bowl with a ragtag group of pass catchers that dropped 15 passes a game last year. I don't know where you stand. This is probably a great place to start, Matt. By the way, the Chiefs 3-point favorites, 47-point total, 46.5 in some spots, but you get the point. I don't know where you stand. I expect a resurgence from Patrick Mahomes this season. I don't anticipate comparable stats to 2023.
I agree with you. And I still think for DFS, our friend in the chat, sorry, I forgot the name already. I still think he might be right. Part of the reason I think Mahomes has been playable over the last couple of years on showdown formats specifically is we've rarely seen receivers eclipse like 50% of the routes, aside from Rashee Rice at the end of the year and Kelsey, of course, who is always priced to the moon, just like Mahomes. So they're hard to play together. But now we should be projecting at least a little bit more condensed route trees from these players. With Rashee Rice now in his second year, you bring in Xavier Worthy as a really high draft pick. This week we'll have a little volatility just because Marquise Brown is out. But hypothetically, when Marquise Brown is back, those should be your three receiver sets. And if Mahomes is just delivering targets to all three of those players in a condensed order, he doesn't run very much, especially not till the postseason. So maybe we just see the PPR bonuses, the 100-yard bonuses. Those can work ahead of Mahomes just from a price-adjusted standpoint. So that's something I'm watching early. How much are they actually rotating? Is it like last year? Xavier Worthy's a rookie. Sometimes, as we saw with Sky Moore, now Sky Moore might just suck. Andy Reid will sometimes rotate his rookies with veteran players like Justin Watson. How much do they do that? These are questions I have early on.
So do I. I was more so referring to the fact that he was referred to as Mahomeless.
Oh yeah, I can't get there.
But then is it okay? So is it more, because you're right, he doesn't run a lot, but is it more so not getting to Mahomes, or is it the concern that you're going to have a less concentrated target share and it's tougher to project which one of these receivers is going to blow up? Because I mentioned to you before the show, I just did a betting video for the Odd Shopper channel for tonight's game. Check it out. A side, a long shot, a touchdown, and a prop. And my long shot was Xavier Worthy to have the most receiving yards in this game. And the whole idea, Matt, was just kind of embracing volatility. Not that I think he will, because it's 6-1. It's plus 600. A quarter unit play, something like that on Xavier Worthy. I don't want to bet the over on his standard receiving yard prop. I don't want to bet the over on receptions, because there's a very good possibility as a rookie first game under Andy Reid that he just doesn't get involved as much as we think he would. Now, he was involved a lot on those 2 drives with Patrick Mahomes in the preseason, and then a 3-play drive from Carson Wentz. 2 of those targets went to Worthy, and one of them was a touchdown. He looked good. Yeah, and 2 of those passes were deep attempts from Mahomes. So I guess what I'm saying is this: if you have a guy in Xavier Worthy, you have Rashee Rice, you have Travis Kelce, it's going to be harder to project those guys, at least early on, because we don't know Xavier Worthy's involvement. But it does feel like embracing volatility on a guy in that price point with the speed that he has once the ball is in his hands or downfield as a burner makes it kind of an interesting spot. And we do have him positively leveraged in the slightly positively leveraged in the captain spot as well.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Without Marquise Brown too, I think you just have less people you can rotate him with. Now, Sky Moore played an absurd amount of snaps last year that he had no business playing, but Justin Watson's a veteran. He should get on the field at times. We'll see what Juju Smith-Schuster gives them. And of course, they re-signed Mecole Hardman. I don't think all those guys are going to be active, so you'll have to watch and see. They all kind of suck except for Watson, so who knows. But to that point, I think Worthy needs to be on the field. And if I were Andy Reid, which I'm not, he's a lot smarter than me, I would take some things out of the Texas playbook where Xavier Worthy was used on jet motion. So you can get a runway for that speed, not just from a stationary position lined out wide or something like that. And then get him involved in the screen game, get him involved underneath. Similar to how Miami sometimes uses Tyreek Hill. You can use that speed in unique ways, which isn't just your MVS run straight down the field and clear out the defense and get a deep target here and there. He has a really unique skill set, and with his draft capital, I expect them to use him early in creative ways. And they still need to replace whatever they were trying to do with Kadarius Toney. He was the kind of gadget player before. Xavier Worthy can absolutely do that stuff.
Yeah, he can. I mean, Toney was as big of a disappointment as you could ever have imagined, and I don't think you could have imagined him being that bad. And he was.
He was wild, man, because, he'd drop 4 passes and then he'd catch 4. And the 4 he'd catch, you could see glimpses of like the electric athleticism, but it's just, he couldn't get it all there.
Remember that week 1 game last year against Detroit? It's like it just set him up for an entire season of failure. Multiple drops, and then the one in his hands that deflects out of his hands into was that actually a pick 6?
I can't remember if it was a pick 6, but I remember that horrific game because I played a lot of him in DFS. I was in on Kadarius Toney last year, had him in best ball. Yeah, obviously that failed.
Yeah, I had some Kadarius Toney as well. And what you were doing is really banking on Patrick Mahomes and not anticipating Rashee Rice becoming 1,000-yard receiver either. So, that's kind of what happened. Rashee Rice is like 3rd in yards after the catch, which is crazy. Bridge Lion said, I love Chiefs Showdown. I kind of know what he means by that, Matt, because they do have some obscure plays that they draw up at the goal line. And maybe that's not at all what he's referring to, because Mahomes did spread it around a lot more last year. I'm not entirely convinced he does that now that you have Worthy. But last year you would see where like Kelce would have 7 targets, Rice would have 7, and then 8 other guys would have 3 or 2. And then they use those wild shovel passes and kind of gimmick plays at the goal line, backup tight ends. We're talking Kansas City now, and we'll shift over to Baltimore in a second. We'll just go team by team here and then build out a lineup before the show ends. I'm going to go straight to the bottom and ask you a question about somebody. Maybe not fully to the bottom, but we're back and I'm excited. So it must be done. All right. What do you think about Samaje Perine in this spot? Is he the new Jerick McKinnon?
I don't think so. I think he does things just a little differently than McKinnon. Like Perine is out there for pass blocking, more or less. McKinnon's like an explosive athlete, even at this stage of his career, advanced in age. I think he gives you a little more juice, if you will, than a guy like Perine. But Perine's going to play some snaps. I wish he was cheaper, to be honest with you, because like he did just join the team. So is he up to speed? Like how many plays can you actually have him on the field? It's not like he's familiarity with Andy Reid or anything. So that has me a little hesitant in this game specifically. Just how often can you take Perine? And we see this sometimes with guys who are traded over midseason. you know, like they have a cameo appearance in their first game just because what can you really put on the guy's plate? So I don't know. In my opinion, I wish he was a little cheaper.
Yeah, I do as well. The guy is actually a pretty talented pass catching back there. That was the only reason I asked, right? Like if you take, what if I told you, Matt, that if you took any running back last season, right, with 20 plus targets, that Samaje Perine was #1 in yards per route run by a mile.
I would be surprised, but not
It's
super
true.
surprised, not like flabbergasted, but I would be surprised.
2.09. Next closest is 1.79 and 1.76 for Brees Hall. That's the only reason I ask you about Perine. Like, what if it just turns out that, I know he just joined the team, by the way, and that's the biggest problem. Like, what if Perine is someone that they can effectively use in this offense? He's an interesting candidate for today, and I don't know what to make of him.
I don't know what to make of him either. Honestly, him joining the team 8 days ago makes me like Pacheco more. Because how much work are we really going to give Carson Steele? I mean, this guy's basically a fullback playing in the NFL. And sometimes Kansas City finds these diamonds in the rough at running back. I don't really think we found one here. This guy played it like his college football in the MAC, and then he tried to transfer up to UCLA, largely failed. Couldn't break out of a timeshare. So, I mean, I don't really buy it with him. He might need to play snaps today just out of necessity because their presumed backup signed 8 days ago. But I mean, if anything, this just makes me like Pacheco. He might come off the field a little less than he normally would if Perine had more than 8 days to prepare.
Do you think Steele is viable at this price point? And let me say quickly, I prefer usually in showdowns to go to the minimum salary pass catcher. It's funny because you and I would look at it differently from a volume standpoint. In like if you're looking at higher price players, you can get guaranteed volume for certain running backs. It's just insanely valuable. But those touches for a running back are less valuable per touch than a target is, right? Per target, by a lot. So that's what's tough with Carson Steele is he's minimum salary, but per opportunity as far as rushing attempts go is just less valuable than per like opportunity per reception or per target.
I agree with you. And I think there's even more concerns with him than Perine. Really, the only thing working in his favor is he's been there longer than Perine. His prospect profile is terrible. People were saying he might move to fullback. That's not great for just pure rushing ability. He's not a premier pass catcher, so third down work is highly questionable. I think I would rather go up to Perine just because of the pass catching. And to your point, your opportunities are worth more if you're catching a pass versus like slamming into the back of your line on a 3rd and short or something.
Yeah.
But I think this might be among the highest snap share games we see from Pacheco all year. If it plays the way I think it might, Perine just having that little experience.
I think you're absolutely right. Plus, Pacheco was already used as a workhorse down the stretch last year.
Pacheco had an awesome playoff run, average over 20 touches per game. His third down usage spiked. This is with Jerick McKinnon on IR for that run, but it was positive to see him get it done. He wasn't an epic failure when they had to use him in that role. So I don't think they're scared to do it. I think the Perine signing more than anything else is just like, all right, we didn't take any shots at backup running back. We were banking on finding a diamond in the rough with Deneric Prince and Carson Steele, and it failed. And they were very lucky that Samaje Perine came available.
They were really lucky because Perine as a backup running back is actually a pretty, like, that's kind of a commodity on if you're the Chiefs.
Absolutely.
It's a luxury.
For sure. If Pacheco gets hurt, God forbid, you can stick Perine out there and have serviceable running back play. And the biggest thing for the Chiefs is he's not going to make mistakes. He's going to pass block. He's not going to fumble. And if he gives you, like league average yards per carry, who cares? Everyone else is a plus player.
The only reason Denver got rid of him is because they're in rebuild mode and they've got a bunch of young running backs. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
You know? Hey, Marvin asked, by any chance, does the $1 promo for NFL tools also include the Showdown Sims? does it include the Showdown Sims? It includes everything, brother. Literally everything. Matt and I are going to build a lineup. Dude, I'm actually looking forward to this. Build a lineup out with the single lineup sim for Showdown tonight and see what the results look like. Do that at the yeah, we'll do that at the end. No, Marvin, it includes everything. For those of you guys that are just joining us, didn't see any of the strategy shows earlier this week, best promo you're going to find in the industry, hands down, for the best tools. And I can confidently say, now that we have this single lineup sim, the most innovative tools that you're going to find, you're going to love the single lineup sim. We built it for you, with you guys in mind, with people like me in mind too, with Ben in mind, guys who love hand building stuff, but also want to evolve with the way things are going. You can hand build your lineups, get instant feedback. So we have the big sim, right? Like the pre-contest sim, the contest generator, which is also included for $1. Links in the description and in chat. So it's $1 for every single NFL tool that we have. The only exception from that, the only difference, that and Sims Max, is that you can generate up to 1,000 lineups in the contest generator and sim 1,000 in the sim, where it's 10,000 for the Sims Max. But that's the only difference. Especially if you're not 150 maxing everything, you don't need that to begin with. Ownership, boom bust, top stacks, single lineup, the brand new single lineup sim that we'll show you in a bit. The sims itself, player projections, lineup generator, premium Discord. I'm missing stuff. It's everything for a single $1. So if you're not in yet, that link in the description and in chat will take you right there. And you've got Thursday night football, $1 million up top, Friday night football, Sunday early slate, main slate, afternoon slate, any turbo slates. All of our tools are set up for them, and Monday night football and Sunday night football for one single $1. I shouldn't have needed to say any of that. Is like, do it, because why would you not? Anyway, Matt, my point that I don't remember anymore. I don't remember what I was saying. That's fine. I went on a wild tangent. I'm excited about this, but essentially we build our lineups out and then we see the results based on it being simmed against the field. And we didn't have that luxury last year. We had to go straight by the sims, and we weren't able to build our own lineups out and throw them into the sim itself.
No, I was doing it like a caveman, trying to think like, oh yeah, this will be good. It's got, it should have leverage, but you don't actually know. And sometimes like you might throw in, at least I've done this in the past, and I've looked at some of this stuff early this year with the sims, especially in college football, because we've had those for 2 weeks now. So I've had the luxury of using them. But it's like, all right, I've got this low-owned player in my lineup because he's cheap. And then it turns out it's like, oh, that combination's actually extremely owned because you get this player in order to get the studs. And you don't get that feedback on your own, but you do with the sims. And it tells you directly whether essentially it's a good lineup or a bad lineup. So I like that quite a bit, yeah.
I can't wait to use it tonight and Sunday. Who else for Kansas City should we be digging into here? I mean, we could talk about the builds as well, and we'll do that when we build out a lineup. There's no Hollywood Brown. So, up top, it's Mahomes, Kelsey, Pacheco. Is it fair to say that we both like Pacheco today, based not on the matchup, but the projected volume for him?
Yeah, I like Pacheco quite a bit. And I think there's a chance he's being under projected. And again, it's week 1. Our projections do an amazing job, but this is the least amount of information we have available. You have to make assumptions on what the workload's going to be. Everyone in the industry does this. We're all making assumptions. I think we do a good job of it, but there is a chance we're wrong. And if you have one of these assumptions that you think is different than the field, this is where you can exploit it and take advantage of the field. I think there's a chance Pacheco might just be like an every down back, assuming this plays to the spread. And if that's the case, he would be an excellent play. So he's one of my favorite Chiefs.
That's a great point. That in week 1, why, like, if in week 1, if you're ever going to take stands based on how you see things compared to how the rest of the industry sees them, this is the time to do it.
For sure. Least information. We have no idea. And especially a coach like Andy Reid, he's done things that we don't expect.
All the time. Aside from that, though, I think, look, Rice is always viable. I mentioned, we were talking about it earlier. He's not a deep threat, but after the catch, he can do damage. I think he was top 3 in yards after the catch last year. Only 6 targets downfield, 1 reception. So you're still talking about like a guy that isn't going to see a lot of deep opportunities, but is also somebody that, if you're peppering him, is going to get involved a lot. If you had to, how would you prioritize pass catchers between the top three and Kelsey, Rice, and I won't even put Worthy in there because he's cheaper than both of them by a lot.
I definitely prefer Rice. We saw like a mini trend with Kansas City last year where they would take their feet off the gas with Kelsey because this team knows they're going to the playoffs. So they would, like, Mahomes would have to tear his ACL or something for that not to happen.
Are you down on Kelsey this year? It sounds like you're kind of down on him this year.
For two reasons. One, he is getting older. Whether that decline is large or small, I don't think it matters a ton. It is happening, but I'm worried about his snap share because we've seen him banged up at times. And I think at this point in the Kansas City dynasty, they know they're making it to the playoffs. What does it matter if Kelsey plays like 60% of the snaps versus 80? You're going to the playoffs either way. But you do need him in the playoffs. Like, he needs to play as many snaps as possible there. So I think there's a chance that maybe we're over projecting snaps and routes for Kelsey, and there could be some training wheels on him. This is a big assumption, but it started to happen a little bit last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at times this year. They have capable backup tight ends, and they have personnel to use. If you want to change formations, personnel groupings, they can do that. So I'm a little worried about Kelsey overall, and I don't have that concern with Rice. If anything, he's the opposite, as an ascending player who might play more than last year in his second season with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Is it fair to say that when you look at that massive price drop from Kelsey to Rice, that also plays into it? I mean, they're $2,000 different in the flex spot.
Oh yeah, 100%. That is definitely a big component of this.
It's kind of funny too. You have really a $2,000 cliff drop off Kelsey to Rice and Rice to Xavier Worthy. That's what you're looking at. And then you get into $3,200 Justin Watson. We've seen him involved in spots. I wouldn't be shocked, and also targeted downfield as well. So you're playing Justin Watson for, right, that rogue deep target that he probably won't catch, but will get the target. No Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We talked about P. Ryan. I mean, and then you just get down to your Sky Moores and your Mecole Hardmans and your Noah Grays. All right, do what you do best, man. Do what you do best and try and break this one down. Now that Xavier Worthy's here, it's a mess.
I think Justin Watson's got to be the first guy you look at based on what he's done in the offense previously. He's the player who's had the most consistent role. I mean, I fell victim to this at times last year. He had, what was it, like the 8-target game, and then the very next week he was complete chalk and busted. But part of the reasons he was chalk is that he just plays a lot of snaps. So reliable blocking. He does have a downfield component to his game. If you do have to play one of the Dusty Chiefs receivers, he's my preference, but I don't feel strongly about it. And there's a chance he just comes in super owned. Obviously, monitor the tools throughout the day, but I think you see like some gadget stuff for Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman, depending on who's active, maybe even, like a Juju Smith-Schuster. Definitely watch pre-games and actives. There's a chance one of these guys is not active today. But Watson, I think, plays the most. And if you play like a Sky Moore or something, I think you're banking on kind of like a gadget play that's just designed for one of these players. But don't feel great about any of them. Watson, I think, is the preferred one if you got to go down there.
Yeah, you're not going to like this. I think the preferred for me is probably a cheaper Noah Gray.
I don't disagree with that. I was isolating just the receivers, but that goes kind of in line with like if they ease off Kelsey at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we're probably going to land in the same spot here, but with Noah Gray, it's just, you're talking about a guy that kind of consistently saw 2-3 targets per game, which isn't bad. He had some 4 or 5 target games as well, but you're not going to project him for that. What did he have, Matt? In 21 games, he had 52 targets. So again, games. What's that?
21 games is wild.
I know, right? It is. But even in the playoffs, 3 receptions on 3 targets against Baltimore in the postseason, 5 targets. 11 targets through 4 postseason. My point is that he's a guy who, yeah, he's clearly behind Kelsey. He's not exciting, but they do still get him involved. He averaged 2.5 targets per game. He's close to the bottom, and it's entirely possible that they look his way in the end zone inside the 10, as they do often with some of these bigger bodied players. So, look, this isn't a ringing endorsement, but it's us trying to get down into the weeds and find somebody here. I think the touchdown equity is probably higher there.
I mean, what do you think the snap difference between those players was last year?
Which player? Sorry.
Travis Kelce and Noah Gray.
Are you about to tell me that it's a lot less than I think it would be?
That's, yeah.
Oh my God.
You looked up their snaps?
Yeah. So
yeah, Noah Gray played a ton last year.
What?
I double checked this, triple checked this, because it was eye-opening. I looked on like 4 different providers. It's accurate.
Wow. Even in the games Kelce played, because remember, Kelce missed week 1, didn't play week 18. Noah Gray did. But Noah Gray was still averaging like 50% of the snaps in. They were out there a lot to get, and clearly he's blocking a lot of the time, but I had no clue it was that much.
He played on 53% of Kansas City's offensive snaps last year.
That's crazy.
53%. I mean, if you're going to get out there, and he actually ran more routes than blocking stuff. 402 total routes. And he was blocking at what, like 342?
Mm-hmm.
So he does block a lot, but I mean, he is unless Justin Watson plays like every snap, which is possible, and they don't trust those dusty guys behind him. Noah Gray, I think, is a pretty safe bet in a game like this. He should give you like somewhere in the 45 to 55% of the snaps, running a route on at least half of those. So I mean, like 25 routes would probably be a reasonable projection for him.
Meanwhile, Sky Moore, like Andy Reid just stopped playing Sky Moore last year.
That was wise.
People were stoked on him. They were high on Sky Moore coming into the season. And I still remember, and look, this isn't criticizing anyone, because it's good to take stands. If you're wrong, you move on. But I'll never forget in week 1, you just had people coming out and being like, oh God, I think I was wrong. Like after 1 week, it's halftime and people are like, I think I might've been wrong on Sky Moore. It was terrible. So they brought Mecole Hardman back from what? The Jets, I think it was. From the Jets.
Yeah, he's got the familiarity,
but the only time he played was 100% of snaps in week 18 when none of the starters were out there. So like, these guys are not priorities to be on the field.
No, I think he's like special teams depth.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I
think it's Watson. Yeah. And
Watson,
as I said,
or Gray.
Yeah, or Gray. I meant, sorry, of the receivers. Now we're mixing each other up. But I'm going to be definitely on Xavier Worthy today. I have no problem taking shots at 5,800, especially when it's a guy that only needs 1. If I asked you this, and then we can move on, unless there's anything else for Kansas City. If I asked you, hey, Matt, you have to give me an over or under on 53% of snaps for Xavier Worthy today.
Over.
Okay. 65% of snaps.
I think that's a pretty good line.
Okay.
I would still go over.
I was going to keep
getting closer.
I was going to keep going up until I wanted to start low. So you'd say 65 and a half snap share is a decent line for Xavier Worthy.
Yes.
With Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback at $5,800.
And I'm expecting him to have a higher target per route rate than a lot of other players because of his skill set. Honestly, like Zay Flowers on the other side was a good example of this early last year, where his snaps weren't always the highest, but then they grew throughout the season. But when he's on the field, he's so explosive and dynamic in what he can do with the ball. He's on the field for a purpose. I think he'll have specific plays drawn up for him, a lot of motion stuff with him because of the speed. So even though it might not be 100% or anywhere close to maybe even like a Rashee Rice, I think he's going to be involved.
Yeah, I'm with you. Keep vape. Very curious about the outcome of this game. Who do y'all think wins this? It's so tough. Harbaugh's amazing in week 1, 12-4 against the spread. Reed's 7-3 against the spread, 9-1 straight up. Only loss was last year. Patrick Mahomes, it's such a tough game. If I'm betting it, it's -2.5, and I'm paying a little additional juice on Kansas City at -120. You ready to talk about the Ravens here?
Absolutely.
All right. Oh, one more thing, guys. So you've heard us talk about drafters before. You've heard us talking about overlay. Like I don't like saying, oh yeah, free money or anything like that. We are 9 hours from kickoff, Matt. Their $15 million, $2.5 million contest, right? 500K up top, $15 entry, still has 40,000 entries unfilled.
You should play that if you like playing best ball.
Yeah. 40,000 unfilled. That's crazy. And if you sign up with the link in the description or in the chat, you don't need to use the promo code. Just use that link. It'll take you right there. You're immediately getting your deposit matched up to $100. So if you put 100 in, now you have 200. If you put 50 in, now you have 100. Even if you were to deposit 20, now you have 40, and you've got massive, massive overlay. If you like best ball, like we all love underdog, we all love DraftKings for best ball, but none of them are seeing this type of overlay with such a big prize pool. So if you still got some time today to make it happen, drafters should be exactly where you're doing it, grabbing that bonus, grabbing the overlay. And if you draft 10 teams, I think it is, you get another additional ticket. So yeah, that overlay is crazy. Link down there in the description and chat. Get your 100% match deposit up to $100 as well. All right, Baltimore. I'm going to toss this over to you, and I want to know what you're doing with Lamar, whether it be capped. Because remember, there was a time where you had to captain Lamar Jackson. You just had to.
Yes. Those are fun days.
Are those days still around, or are they gone?
I don't think you have to. It's partially because they bring in a guy like Derrick Henry to take some pressure off. They now have a presumed #1 receiver in Zay Flowers. Andrews is healthy. So you kind of have like the full cast around Lamar for the first time ever. And then it's also the Chiefs on the other side. So you have other studs you could target to. So I think there are more options. But with that said, our tools show positive leverage with Lamar. I ran the Sims earlier this morning. I got positive leverage to him, especially in the flex position, but I still had more captain than the field, according to our projections. Just like good old days, Lamar's a good play and you want him, whether it's captain or flex, that's for you to decide. But I think you definitely want him in most lineups.
Are there any obscure type builds that you think make a lot of sense today, in the sense of like, hey, it's a milli maker, and you don't have to be. Even some of the single entry stuff is top heavy. Are there any obscure builds that you think are viable? We could talk about the players all day, but I think it does the viewers a disservice if we don't get into like the strategy here. So just curious to know where you stand on that. Like going no QBs, which seems crazy when you have Lamar and Mahomes, going, onslaught or something like that, going with multiple defenses. What are your thoughts?
I think doing some of that weird stuff from an ownership perspective could make sense. It depends on what you're playing. But to kind of give an overview of the slate, I think we have a really weak mid-range. It's kind of just Xavier Worthy and Rashad Bateman, and then kickers and defenses. Otherwise, I mean, like Justice Hill is way too expensive. I think you could argue once you get below that, you start getting into the dart throws. So, I mean, if you use these mid-range builds, you're probably getting funneled into a certain build. Your stars and scrubs are using the same players as well. So I think to get away from some of that stuff because of the limited cheaper options, you might just have to play unique studs together, whether that ends up being like Lamar with Derrick Henry or the running backs and not the pass catchers. That could be a way to do it too. I'm going to lean on the Sims to make some of those decisions, but that's kind of how I view the slate, with there being kind of a lot of studs that we know who are going to play and then the weaker options for value.
I don't disagree at all. I mean, it's funny. How many times did we build lineups and we'd come down to the last spot last year and be like, oh, good, we have backup quarterbacks and nobody else.
I mean, today there's no one playable.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mark Andrews, I think he's kind of in a different price tier than even like Worthy. He's a little more expensive, but once you get below Zay Flowers, you really only have three options before you get to Justin Watson that aren't kickers and defenses. It's Andrews, it's Worthy, and it's Bateman.
Yep, that's it.
So you can't even play like a balanced build. You don't have enough guys to do it.
Doesn't work. And
It's
then
hard.
you've got the Noah Grays down there, and you have guys like Isaiah Likely even. And I know he's negatively leveraged in our tools. I understand why. We've got him pulling 14% in the utility, but do you think there's a possibility that we do see more two tight end sets with Isaiah Likely used more as a pass catcher? He is talented. He is a good pass catching tight end. We've seen that every time Mark Andrews goes down. And really, outside of Zay Flowers, who's only going into his second year, at wide receiver, they're wildly unproven. I understand there's a ton of hype around Rashad Bateman this year, no different than literally any other year. And maybe something transpires this year. Maybe it doesn't. They don't have a lot of names outside of Zay Flowers.
No, they don't. And I'm not sure what they're going to do, because you just don't see teams use 12 personnel a lot. And I don't think you can really do it unless you move him to receiver for a lot of snaps, which is in his bag, I guess. But I mean, this guy was a player that had what, 10 catches? I think he didn't even have 10 catches through the first 10 weeks of the season.
Right.
It's the same OC. Snaps were terrible with Andrews in the field. So even if we think that he's earned more playing time, like how much is that? Because teams do not use 12 personnel really more than 30% of the time ever. Teams are almost never doing that. And some of the teams that play 12 personnel at the highest rate are around 30%. So, I mean, I just have a real hard time seeing Likely play. And I think, honestly, we have him negative leverage. I think we might be projecting him too much. Some of this just has to do with where he is in the industry and his props and stuff. You know, like we can't take a massive stand on Likely. But would you be surprised if he goes catchless? He did it plenty of times last year before Andrews got hurt. I would not be surprised at all.
I would not at all. But, you know, Digital Buddha in the chat said best way to know is look at the snap count when both Andrews and Likely were healthy together last year. I don't know if that's accurate either, is what I'm saying. Like if they saw also Isaiah Likely, and take this for what it's worth, it could be worth nothing. Like all of the reports I saw were like, hey, Isaiah Likely has arguably been the best single player for the Ravens all throughout training camp. So my question is, do they try to figure out ways to get him more involved? And maybe, like you said, maybe it's just you can't. But
it also could be better and still not usable for DFS.
That's also true. Yeah,
and it's
like okay, now he gets 3 targets.
Think about the complexion of the Ravens. So you have to use your 5 offensive linemen. You're not taking Andrews off the field for any length of time at tight end. Then you have Lamar and Derrick Henry, so that leaves 3 other pass catchers. Zay Flowers is not coming off the field. You have Rashad Bateman. Sure, you could replace Likely with Bateman. And then Aguilar. I think a lot of people would argue Aguilar needs to come off the field, but he has a skill set that no one else in this offense has. He's your deep threat. That's what he does. He's like your MVS of this offense. So whether you like it or not, Aguilar is going to play some snaps. If it's, you know, like 50%, yeah, you can't use Aguilar by himself, but it cannibalizes someone else. So if we have like 9 locked in players, Likely has to play over basically Rashad Bateman or Aguilar. Like you have a 3-way rotation between those guys, depending on, I don't know, what down and distance it is, what your coach sees matchup wise. Because who else do you bring off the field? I just don't see how you can bring Andrews or Zay Flowers off. So, I mean, I think you're really looking at a tap ceiling for Likely. Now, he's cheap, and all he has to really do is beat Noah Gray, I guess. So you can still use him. But we've already seen the Chiefs use 12 personnel. We've not seen the Ravens do it. There's just questions here that I have. Doesn't mean I'm right. You could have the exact opposite opinion, play Likely, and be right as well. We're basically just guessing with him right now.
It's a guess. All I can say is he is talented. So if the opportunities did somehow come to fruition, then it would be interesting. Mike Drop said it's not the same OC Greg Roman is with the Chargers now. Greg Roman wasn't with the Ravens last year, though.
No.
No, he wasn't. 2022 was Greg Roman's last year as Ravens OC.
This is the Georgia OC, is it not?
Yeah.
What's his name? I love this guy. It's escaping me right now.
Yeah, me too. Hold on.
This is his second year as OC.
Oh, it's Todd Monken.
Yeah, Todd Monken, the former Georgia OC. He was there last year.
He was. Right. It's yeah, but I think did Roman take a year off? I can't remember what he did last year, but I know
Isn't he with LA now?
Yeah, him and Harbaugh. It's gonna be 50 rushing attempts a game in LA.
Okay, one thing I will say is I've watched more college football than maybe anyone should. Todd Monken had Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington with Georgia, and they did play a lot of 12 personnel. So if you want to look back on historical for
I love
Todd
how
Monken,
you remember that shit.
I mean, dude, well, it is a little different because Andrews and Likely sort of have like a semi-overlapping skill set where they're both primarily pass catchers. Likely is basically a glorified receiver. You could argue that he should play over Bateman, and I wouldn't really push back on you. But between Bowers and Darnell Washington, it's like a sixth offensive lineman and then a wide tight end. So they are a little different, but all this to say, if you're a Likely guy, Monken has used a lot of 12 personnel before, but you got to go back to Georgia to see it.
Derrick Henry.
Derrick
Henry. I'll tell you what, man. Can you believe Gus Edwards had more goal line carries than anyone last year in the league?
Yeah. Baltimore is going to be in the red zone a lot. I would think Lamar would have more, though. Like Lamar would have siphoned off more than that to have Gus Edwards lead the league, you know?
Guess how many combined, well, guess how many reds or goal line attempts Lamar had last year?
I'm guessing it's fewer than I thought because you just told me Gus Edwards led the league.
5.
Yeah, that's a surprise to me.
Yeah, I was surprised too. I guess what I'm saying is you don't bring Derrick Henry in unless you intend on using him heavily. Once you get inside the 10. My question to kind of set the table for this is if that's the case, and I think you and I could both, can we agree that Derrick Henry is going to be the guy that they're using in those spots?
Yeah, for sure.
What about in between the 20s? What about Justice Hill? What about this? What about this backup here? What do we see? What do you project for him?
I think it's Derrick Henry most of the time, except for clear down and distance, long third downs, stuff like that. To your point, you just don't bring in Derrick Henry for anything else. And it's early in the season. He's healthy. Like maybe pass blocking situations and 3 and long, you bring in Hill. But I think it's a lot of Henry and Hill sparingly. And I know they've said otherwise at times, like Justice Hill be certainly involved. I don't know. Some coaches just like gas up players in camp and stuff. Like you never really hear him say super bad things. And when you do, it's probably a really bad sign. But what did you bring Derrick Henry for if you're not going to use him like a pure bell cow?
I agree. Also, Justice Hill is not cheap.
He's priced off, like he's not that far off from Xavier Worthy.
I know. I don't think I could comfortably get to Justice Hill at all.
Comfortably, no.
Well, I ran the Sims, and I ran the Sims over at Stochastic, not the single lineup, but ran the actual pre-contest Sims, and I got 2.7% Justice Hill total.
I did the same. I got 2%.
Yeah. It's the price point. Meanwhile, Xavier Worthy, I got a combined 35%.
I got 35.3.
We're close. I got a lot of Lamar, but Lamar, how about this? I have a ton of Lamar at flex, my highest owned flex player. But my highest owned captain is actually Patrick Mahomes at 25% right now, followed by Rice and then Lamar Jackson at 15% apiece.
I got Rice as my highest exposed captain, Lamar second, Mahomes third. Not a ton separating them though. So I'm guessing it's just those probably going to be your 3 highest leverage captains based on the current rendition of our projections and ownership. If you end up with one of those guys, you're probably looking pretty good.
Daniels, you said look at his props. You guys are off on this one. Who's props?
Probably talking Likely.
I wasn't sure if he was talking Likely or Justice Hill.
Oh, it could be Justice Hill. Again, like I very well could be off on many of these takes. We're guessing.
Yeah.
This is the
Hill,
least information we'll have all year.
Hill at 15.5 rushing yard prop. I don't love that.
What's likely's prop? Maybe he means likely.
I think likely's is 14.5 when I looked the other day. It's actually, it's anywhere from 15.5 to 19.5 when I looked last night. So still pretty low.
I was gonna say seems rich, but you never know. And again, to like his point, and like I'm well aware I'm gonna be wrong on stuff. That's the point. But if you're right on one, you have a chance to take down a prize that's like disproportionate to anything you do later in the season with accurate data. We don't know, man. Like, I'm willing to admit that I'll be wrong. Hopefully I'm right, like once on one of these takes early in the season.
Yeah. Daniels was talking about Justice Hill. He said the 4,400 is a bit much. I do like that 8.5 receiving. Well, that's the thing, you can use props to kind of gauge where a player should be at from a projection standpoint, but you could still like overs on a guy and think he's way overpriced in DFS. You could like unders on a guy and think he's a phenomenal DFS play. So, they're not tethered that closely, honestly. It's all dependent on the salary. Who else you want to get to for Baltimore before we build this lineup?
I guess we got to talk Zay, Bateman, Aguilar, the players that are even dustier than that, which I don't think we really need to talk about as much. Should be less rotating here. But we honestly kind of hit on it already. I think Zay Flowers is a fine play at his price range. He comes in a little cheaper than some of the other studs like your QBs and Derrick Henry's of the world, but he's still more expensive than Mark Andrews, than Bateman for sure. I think straight up, just 1-for-1, I'd rather play Mark Andrews than Zay Flowers. And it's mainly just, I think their prices are too wide compared to the difference in their opportunities. Andrews should be right there with Zay Flowers. And I think you could argue in certain instances, he'll be ahead in various games, depending on the matchups. Bateman or Aguilar is where it gets kind of dicey for me. With Bateman, just give me Xavier Worthy for 600 more. With Aguilar, he kind of has a similar skill set to Justin Watson, honestly, like a situational deep threat. Is this the game he catches the bomb? I have no idea. But I will say this on the likely stuff. I think there is more of a threat to Aguilar playing fewer snaps this year because of Likely's resurgence, I guess. He's a little more proven. But I don't know. Again, Aguilar does something different than anyone else in the offense. So I don't think he's going to be like iced completely.
Just looking down too, you're talking about like, Walker, Sky Moore, Hendershot, Charlie Kohler, Tylan Wallace. There are a bunch of guys that are just entirely unplayable here. From a salary, like just looking at salary, the cheapest I could get to for Baltimore probably is Isaiah Likely, and I don't feel great about it either. But I don't think you can go any cheaper than Isaiah Likely.
100% agree. I'm not messing around with Devontae Walker.
I should point out, number one, I like Derrick Henry a lot here. I like both running backs in this game. Pacheco more, though, to Matt's point earlier. I like Pacheco more because, one, he's cheaper. Also, if you've got a guy that's going to be out there a ton, this is someone that will catch passes, that can see serious volume in the passing game. I don't see that for Derrick Henry today. But I like both kickers, too. I think this is really one of those games where if it ends up being lower scoring, where these teams are kind of stuck at the 30-yard line, either or, you might see a ton of field goal kicking opportunities in a spot like this, like just two juggernaut defenses and offenses. But if it ends up being a defensive battle, you can't tell me that Justin Tucker doesn't look, really good today. Harrison Butker, another great kicker, doesn't look really good today. Even at their price points, I'm not totally shying away from them.
No, me either. And this is another way to change your build. If you're willing to be overexposed to kickers and defenses, it gives you more mid-range options. I know some people are kind of averse to this. We actually have the Ravens defense as one of the higher leverage plays in the slate. And again, a lot of things go into leverage. It's not just raw production. Sometimes this is just Well, the Chiefs are going to be extremely owned in the event they fail. So many lineups fail with them that having the Ravens, even in just a couple lineups, could be something you want to do. So that also might be the lack of mid-range options, and you just get stronger lineups by not playing the dusty guys at the bottom who are going to be highly owned. And with Tucker and Butker specifically, you compare them to a guy like Nelson Aguilar, or even down with likely Justin Watson. You boot 2 long field goals. That's a lot different than playing the guy that needs to catch a long touchdown to get the same exact fantasy point.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough, but I don't hate him at all. Just given the conditions of this game, just the overall defense, everything. Like, would you be shocked knowing that we have 2 great defenses, but also 2 really good offenses, and these guys move the ball downfield and stall out a lot and just have to settle for field goals? That wouldn't be surprising to anybody, I don't think.
It's also week 1. Like, you're bringing in new things. Say you get like an illegal motion, it brings you from like a 3-1 to a 3-6. Far more likely to kick a field goal. Stuff like that happens in all games, and then week 1, it's even heightened more.
Yeah, man. You ready to build a lineup before we get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it. Are we doing it on with you on the lineup builder?
Yeah, well, Jordan has it up there. We'll do that. See how it works. I bring my own up too, so I can see it better. So I'm going to plug him in as well on my side. And by the way, guys, single lineup sim. If you've ever looked for, well, really the best tool ever for hand builders that also want to get the same edge as people using sims and advanced tools, this is it. Hands down. This is it, man. You're building your lineup out and then simming it and getting instant feedback, simmed results on every lineup you build. And you can build as many as you want. Trust me. The only downside is that you'll be stuck on this tool using it for hours because it's addicting. But this $1 for all of our NFL tools, NFL Core Weekly Package, link in the description and in the chat. We're only doing this for week 1, but it gets you Thursday night football, Friday night, every Sunday slate, Monday night football, Sunday night football, everything for $1 single dollar. If you're going to do it today so you can exploit every single slate and every single contest and get in on every NFL tool we have for $1 for the entirety of week 1. All right, Matt, go first. I'll let you go first, the captain here. I know who I'd go with. I want to see who you're going with here.
Well, I would, based on our current tools, I'm looking at 3 guys. It's Rashee, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes. I think Rashee Rice is the most interesting of those 3 and gives you the most leverage of the bunch.
Let's do it.
Well, also, we didn't say what we were playing. What are we playing?
Oh, let's go.
That's more of a large field play.
Want to go large field?
Sure. Smaller field, I would prefer the QBs.
Go large field, 25% to first. You said Rice?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go Xavier Worthy here.
All right, I'm gonna make this easy. Play Lamar. Our tools suggest you want to play him, whether it's flex or captain. That depends on your build and what you're playing.
I'm gonna see what happens.
Yes.
I'm gonna see what happens if I jam Mahomes. Think we can make it work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've already built quite a bit, so I know we can make it work.
I meant, do you think we can build a lineup that'll be good, is what I'm saying. Let's try it.
Yeah, I think we can.
5,500 remaining per player for our last 2.
All right, I'm going to plug in Noah Gray. We've already done Rashee Rice, captain.
Oh, I like that.
Give you a stud to finish with.
Also, the Kelsey fade as well in the 3-man stack, but Noah Gray in there. See, that gives us enough for Derrick Henry. My only question now becomes, how chalky is this build?
You could definitely, it depends. If you want to play the salary game, save on ownership, you could go down and play Zay Flowers. Pacheco might even be able to accomplish that for you. You leave 1K on the table with Pacheco, but then you got a weird 5-1 build. But the 5-1 probably helps your ownership too, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So I just ran it with Henry and it's a 12% simmed ROI. If you run it with Zay Flowers, what if you ran it with Mark Andrews at 6,400 and left 3K on the table.
What do you get?
I'm going to tell you. Negative 27%.
You might be leaving too much.
I think so.
Yeah. When I was running it earlier, it did not seem like a slate where you need to get absolutely crazy leaving salary on the table.
Right.
And I think that's because we have so many stud options that are in play. You know, like I could make a reasonable case for wanting to play 8 guys on this slate. Well, you can't play 8 of them. So that kind of helps you with some of the ownership just naturally.
Right. No, absolutely. I wonder what the onslaught 5-man Kansas City with Pacheco and only Lamar Jackson as the Baltimore run back looks like. I'm running that now. 11%.
Yeah, I'm looking through what I ran earlier. I got a fair amount of those. I also got somewhere like just Justin Tucker's the only guy in Baltimore I got. Obviously, those are playing to Kansas City, winning by more than the 3 points from the Vegas total.
Well, we've got the Pick'em show coming up next. Obviously, if you guys want to play around with this, you can. I'm going to do so right now as soon as the show is over. Just get some of these lineups in on the single lineup sim. You should follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski on Twitter. That's it, right? It's been a while.
Yeah, we're back tomorrow, me and you, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Friday Night Football. Hell yeah. Okay.
Your Eagles,
I'll
man.
be back tonight as well for Live Before Lock. Hit me up on X at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the day. Football is back. Let's enjoy it. Peace.